The iconic entry in the series, Pokémon Red and Blue, has numerous fantastic features, but some of them show their age and date the game. Pokémon is a true timeless classic with well over 2 decades of games, narrative and features that allowed the game to change with time, while keeping the main gameplay intact. However, in 1998 or 1996 in Japan, Pokémon Red and Blue, as well as Japan's Pokémon Green, swept the globe. It was enough to warrant many complete remakes throughout the years. Many fans forget that Red and Blue was both a brilliant and imperfect title since it has become so famous and put the whole fan base in nostalgic bliss. Let's look at the 5 finest characteristics of Pokémon Red and Blue, as well as the 5 worst elements that people tend to overlook while praising it. We'll start with the 5 worst, and then go on to the 5 greatest. The worst. Number 1. Town sizes. The way settlements are put up is something that many newer games continue to do that Red and Blue originated. While the overworld map is somewhat large, towns in Pokémon Red and Blue seem to be quite little, as if each had just a few residents. Cities have a lot more structures, but they don't seem as lived in as they should. Compared to games like Pokémon Sword and Shield, which depicted enormous villages and cities in the current period, Red and Blue seem a little barren. Because of the restricted cartridge memory, it was a necessary evil. Number 2. Game-specific Pokémon. While succeeding games in the series take use of the split games inside a single generation, there is just one distinction between Pokémon Red and Blue: unique Pokémon. It intended to stimulate social activity among players in order to complete a Pokédex, but it seemed more like a method for Game Freak and Nintendo to generate some extra cash. Growlithe, for example, is only available in Pokémon Red, while Vulpix was only available in Pokémon Blue, and so on. That was the end of it. That was the only distinction back then. Number 3. PC boxes for Pokémon. This was a fixed issue by the time Gen 2 came. However, the first generation PC boxes were the very worst. It was almost hard to keep track of everything. You could only fit a few Pokémon in a single box, and you couldn't tell which Pikachu you were looking at without clicking on it. Worst of all, if the box was full, you had to swap boxes manually, which required a complete save. If you're out in the thick grass capturing Pokémon, this is an issue. Your PC box is suddenly filled and you can't capture that legendary bird. Sorry. Number 4. Inventory management. Let's discuss about the bag in Pokémon Blue and Red for a moment. Due to the limits of the game's designs, it's undoubtedly one of the least deserved components of the worst section of the list. However, when compared to any bag from the future age, it is abysmal. Are you in the middle of a fight and can't seem to locate a single item? Did you place it on the bag list a bit lower than you remember? You're browsing and scrolling in an attempt to locate it. There's no genuine structure. Sure, you may group similar things together, but if you add a new item, it will be pushed to the bottom of the list, forcing you to reorganize everything. And number 5, the grind. These days kids have no idea how difficult Pokémon games were. To level up a Pokémon, you had to either utilize it in combat or use a rare candy, even though it was imperfect. XP all, also known as XP sharing in subsequent games, may be enabled, but it was exhausting. To be honest, if it hadn't been for the grind, the game would have been half as lengthy. If you want to defeat Brock, just hang out in Viridian Forest for an hour and stomp on some bugs. And now, for the top 5 features. Number 1. Music and visuals. The catchiness of the classic melody is something that all fans in original Pokémon Red and Blue agree on. Pallet Town, Lavender Town and the Rivals Fight theme are some of the few songs that bring back memories for many people. However, songs as the Pokémon Center theme, a rival appearance and the whole game's opening theme have all been modified and utilized for different reasons in games. The cries of each Pokémon are still in use today, albeit they have been remastered. In terms of graphics, the Game Boy Color's restricted color palette serves to shape how some Pokémon will appear in the future. Their sprites are strange and one of a kind. Ken Guamori's famous marketing on box graphics, on the other hand, established the gold standard for all Pokémon designs in subsequent generations. Number 2. Self-contained story. Lore, retcons and more lore have been thrown into the mix throughout all generations of Pokémon to create this pocket monster of a narrative. Characters from previous games appear in subsequent incarnations, causing confusion. However, there was nothing previous to the Pokémon Red and Blue. The first generation was the beginning of the narrative. The plot follows a little boy who leaves home, defeats an evil organization and finally defeats the Pokémon League. He may or may not catch them all, but the plot provides him with a complete beginning, middle and conclusion for his self-contained novel that does not need a sequel, even though we got many great ones. Number 3. Gotta catch 'em all is easier with only 151 Pokémon. Because this is the first generation, there were only 151 Pokémon in all, including the rare event only Mew. It was considerably simpler to finish a Pokédex and get a diploma certificate stating that you had done so back then. Between the two games, Red and Blue, you might collect 150 Pokémon. Mew, on the other hand, had to be gained via direct transaction during the special Nintendo events. Sure, you could glitch Mew or use hacking software like GameShark, but events were the only way to do it legally. However, such were quite uncommon, since Nugget Bridge is just an HM2 away. Number 4. Legendary Pokémon. There were precisely 4 legendary Pokémon in Generation 1, plus the event-exclusive Mew, which was subsequently renamed Mythical. The legendary birds Articuno, Zapdos and Moltres were all accessible in their respective hideouts throughout the game. Mewtwo was available to capture in Cerulean Cave after beating the Elite Four. It was simple and straightforward. Legendary status was really legendary status. As generations progressed, more and more legendary status became accessible, making it seem less special and unusual. Getting any of the legendary Pokémon seemed like a standalone accomplishment that wasn't tied to the main tale. You had to track down these thugs in their hideouts. And at number 5, the Elite Four Challenge and Victory Road. Aside from legendary Pokémon and finishing the Pokédex, you may forgive the original Pokémon games for their lack of post-game material. However, the build-up to the final moments was presented as a major event, collecting all 8 Indigo League badges and follow Route 23, which includes a checkpoint for each badge and a dramatic melody, The Final Road. All of this leads to Victory Road, a cave containing some of the most powerful trainers. Make your way through to see if you can discover Moltres' hidden refuge. Then there's the Elite Four. With no Pokémon Center to heal you in between, you'll have to face 4 of the game's most powerful trainers. And then there's him, your adversary, the champion, whom you must defeat one last time. If you defeat him and become the champion, you have completed the game's primary plot. When you take it out of context with other games, it's just awesome. And there you have it, 5 of Pokémon Red and Blue's finest and worst features. Thank you for listening, and I will see you next time.